And so my question for you is how can you be more intentional with your time while you're at the office so the day doesn't get away from you?
Yeah. Man, that's a good question. Oh man. I don't know. I guess, and like this is one thing I preach at the office, but I guess I don't do it myself, is time blocking.
Oh,
I
you're hitting
do
the nail on the
not.
head.
Now, if you saw my Outlook calendar, it is perfectly color coordinated, color coded. I know what each color means,
Okay.
and I preach it to the girls. I'm like, do this first, then this, then this, then this. And then like sometimes I don't do that myself,
Mm-hmm.
and like I tell them, I'm like, you got to time block a lunch. And I know like you're about to say, like, that's so important. Like I have to go at 1 o'clock to eat because one, you have to eat. Like you can't
Mm-hmm.
just not eat every single day of your life. That would not be good. Or you'd eat a lot for supper. So, and so that, I mean, I preach it all the time. And then some days, like I'm really intentional with it. I'm like, okay, guys, this morning I am working on these 5 things and I'm a list checker. So I will write down what I got to do the next day. And for me, I think that's another way that I can divide like what I have to do, like to leave. Like I'm like, okay, this person, this can be done tomorrow. They need this
Yep.
done. Okay, well, it's not like it's add your email or like things you can do in a few minutes, but if you've got 10 other things that like they're buying their car, that's
Mm-hmm.
way more important than changing someone's email address.
Yep.
Different things like that. Or hey, so and so is going to call you for this and this. Well, hey, can I call them tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
And I make a list and I'm like, okay, we've got this and this to do today. In our
Yep.
Monday morning meetings, every Monday we meet at 8:30, me and the girls. And I'm like, okay, what are we doing this week? This is what I've got to get done. And they write
Mm-hmm.
down their list of my things I've got to do. And they're like, hey, did you do this thing? And I'm like, no, let me do it right this second.
Yep.
And so that's one thing that kind of, I mean, and I did that before I became an agent because that's just how my brain is wired. Like I have to have time, like I've got to know this is what I have to get done. I have my
Mm-hmm.
checklist, and for me that's so important. When you start out, they give you your checklist of things to do. I'm like, okay, how much can I get done in one day?
Yep.
I'm one of those kind of people too. I'm like, okay, well, I've got 37 things on this list and it's going to take about approximately 2 minutes to do this one. And I'm just like, I'm a checklister, so I love
Yep.
things like that. But and I think that's kind of helped me, but then sometimes I'm like, I might take a little too long. Or somebody's like, hey, this is an emergency and I've got to talk to you. Well, then my checklist, push that to the side. And then it goes to the next day. And now I've got 3 more things on it.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Things like that.
I've got a couple questions. So, number one, if you could hold yourself accountable, actually, not if you could. Okay. If you held yourself accountable to however many time blocks a day, now they got to be attainable. You can't do so many that because things do come up. But if you did hold yourself accountable to time blocking and being a little bit more intentional with your time, how do you think that would make you feel personally? And then what do you think it would do for you professionally?
Personally, I feel like I would know that I got the things done that I needed to do. And I would feel accomplished because when you get things done, you feel more accomplished. If you don't do anything in the day and you're like, what have I done today? That it is 5 o'clock and I have no idea what I did. I think we did something, like, hey
Mm-hmm.
girls, what did we do today? And they're like, oh, well, we did this, and this, and this happened. I'm like, it's just a blur,
So
and
what?
so
Yep. So why would feeling productive at the end of the day be important to you?
because then I would be like, okay, today I know that I helped so and so and so and so and so and so, and this is what we did for that family, and this is what we did for this person. And then like I said, the days with the blur, you're like, I don't even remember that person's name that I talked to even know that I helped them, and another thing that this could lead back to is if you're intentional, like I know that I helped Michael at this exact time and I know what I did for him. Well, then that can turn into a Google review or referral because you're like, hey, I know I talked to Michael at this time and I helped him do this. Let me just shoot him a text and say, hey, I know we're both really busy, but I
Mm-hmm.
hope that your service was great during this time that we had today, blah, blah, blah. Can you give us a Google review or referral? Like, for me, those could switch to those kinds of things. And if I don't remember anything, then I'm like, I needed to send 10 Google reviews text and I don't even know who I talked to.
Yep. I want to, and I want to go on a little even deeper level real fast. So when compare your days. So think about the days where you feel really productive at the end of the day and when you feel like it was a blur at the end of the day. And there is no right or wrong answer here, but at the end of each of those days and you go home, which of those days make you feel like excited, fired up, like, man, today was a day. Today was a great day, a productive day. Okay. Sure. I was hoping you were going to say that. Yeah, so
no, it's the blur days. I just get so pumped. And for that, you know, like I think about going, like when you get home and you're like, oh, the blur days, you're just like, I am so exhausted. You don't want to do anything.
Okay. So why, So why would it be important, okay, to have more productive days than blur days?
One, so you're not always tired. Two, because then you're going to want to be productive at home and get things done there. You know, like, hey, I'm like, man, I think I'm going to do a load of laundry. And I hate laundry. So for me to want to do a load of laundry is probably a really productive day. Blur days, those laundry just get piled up. We're not doing that laundry that day. But, you know, and it's just things like that. Or like, hey, let's actually cook dinner tonight instead of getting takeout. You know, like the productive days, you're like, let's just grill out or let's just make some spaghetti. But then on the blur days, you're just like, what do you want me to pick up? Because you don't want to do anything. You're just like, here's what we're going to do. I just want to sit on the couch and pretend today was just another day that went by.
Yeah. So any of you listening to this right now, if you can relate, like this would be one thing I'd really encourage you to do is start thinking about what your ideal day looks like. Okay. That's the one thing with when we talk about balance, number one, you have to make sure, because look, no matter how many hours you're putting in at work, no matter how many hours you're putting in at home, if you're not feeling productive, if you're not happy, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, that's going to come across and it's going to come across in a bad way because you can only fake it for so long before you start to get burnt out. Okay. That's the whole point I'm going with here is because you have to make sure you're intentional. You've got your 2 or 3 things that you're trying to accomplish on a daily basis and making sure, look, no one's perfect. But if you can really get good at holding yourself accountable to the most important times in your day with the most important task, it will make you, like, you can even tell the change just in your emotion through how you speak. Like when you talk about, yeah, it makes me feel productive, you get all excited and you're like, yeah. And then, but when you talk about the days go blur, you probably don't know this, but anyone listening, you can tell, like, you're like, oh, those are not good days. Like those just aren't good.
Those days are horrible.
Yeah. So I love it. The other thing I really want to touch base on right here with balance is communication. All right. So communication with not only your team, but your spouse, your family. Communication is key to life, but especially for newer business owners that may have to put in some extra time. Things come up. Maybe you're going to be at work till 10 o'clock at night, or maybe you do have to go in on the weekend. Really making sure you're constantly and consistently communicating, hey, this is why we're doing this. This is why we started a business. This is what our future can look like. Really communicating not only the now, but the future and that vision of why we do what we do.
Yeah. And another thing you got me thinking about whenever you're talking is when I was at my prior agent's office, we did, and I know you know, win the day. For me, that was such an important thing. Like when I was a team member, because I would like have my little checklist. Like I already talked about, I love those. And I would be like, check, check, check. And then I'm like, I won today. I did not lose. I killed it. And then the days that you don't check every box, you're like,